Siomra
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Collecting Issues, where this week we'll be taking a look at Locke and Key Volume 1. Welcome to Lovecraft, Collecting Issues 1 to 6 of the 2008 IDW series by Joe Hill and Gabriel Roriguez.
Very good, you've nailed it.
Yes, I've nailed it.
Now, Benjamin.
Yes.
I think it is worth saying here at the beginning of Collecting Issues, the bi-weekly comic book club,
Right at the start.
that we are going to be looking at Volume 1 of this as if it was its own thing, which has no connection to the fact that we have both read all of the rest of it.
Yes, we're not allowed to do that, Michael.
Yes,
I have been told off by Big Daddy Michael before that I'm not allowed to connect things to a larger universe.
No, that's not what I'm saying. Also, Ben, I think it's fair to say I'm going to state this, a little statement of intent at the beginning of this podcast. This is one of my favourite comic book series.
Yes, it may be a bit skewed.
A little bit skewed, but I'm also going to try and I've actually reread it twice this week. Just to try and get a sense... just try and get a sense of what would this be like. Forget everything else. Just look at this 6-issue collection. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, you wanted
look
to,
at it,
you wanted to isolate it in your mind.
Exactly. Look at it with fresh eyes. Forget about the links. Now, Ben, we all know that's physically impossible.
Yes, because you can't wipe your memory like some kind of computer bank.
No. Even when you wipe a computer's memory, it's not really wiped, is it? But that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
So, Ben, tell us what is Locke and Key?
Locke and Key is, I suppose, above all else, a family drama, Michael. There are lots of elements at play here in this, but the central plot revolves around 3 children.
Oh, and remember, the spoilers. Because the people who are watching this or listening to this have read it.
You've already read this, haven't you?
You've
cheeky
it,
little
you
minxes.
You
If you haven't, pause here.
Pause here and go and read it.
Take a deep breath. It'll take you about an hour and a half to get through the thing and really, give it a read and then come back to us. Welcome back if you left us. The centers on the plot around 3 children. We have Rendell, Tyler. No, sorry, we don't have.
Rendell's the dad.
We have Tyler, Kinsey, and Bodie, who are the 3 kids, who are at the beginning of this recovering from a great and terrible shock into their lives, a huge disruption in their lives. Their father, Rendell, has been murdered by one of his former patients. Their father was a counsellor.
Just jump in over you there, Ben, for a very quick second. Not has been. We do see that. They're not recovering from it. That's how it opens. That is the first issue.
We open on a little bubble that says before, and we get a little bit of backstory here. And the first issue is told between 2 timelines. We have before and now. And the before is done in sections, so we get a little bit of before, a little bit of now, a little bit before, a little bit of now. And slowly it unravels. There's a bloody gruesome murder taking place, Michael.
There's a very gruesome murder.
Yeah, there's some pretty dark stuff happening in that first issue, Michael.
It's a very, very dark introduction to this world, Ben.
So Joe Hill really not pulling any punches in issue number 1. There's a little bit of fridging, but...
Who gets fridged?
No, nobody gets fridged, but our main female, the mother, Nina, gets raped.
There is an implied rape.
There's an implied rape. There's a pretty gruesome murder. Gabriel Roriguez does not hold back on the blood and viscera.
This is very,
end of things.
very
it's
bloody.
Strong.
He doesn't hold back on the axes, let's just say.
I mean, the opening panels there in issue number 1 are 2 gentlemen at a door holding a gun and a crowbar behind their back, or a hatchet. A hatchet behind their backs. So we know something is very sour and wrong from the very beginning. And then we get the shot of that pickup truck there with 2 dead bodies in the back. And slowly it's revealed to us that, unfortunately, Rendell was murdered
by former students.
It's interesting. We meet the 2 main antagonists of issue 1. One is quickly disposed of in issue 1.
Very gruesomely.
Gets a hatchet to the head by his rape victim,
Nina.
And then our other victim, whose name I cannot remember, you're going to have to help me out there. Sam, the other guy, becomes kind of a Bowling for Columbine paragon for the rest of the...
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing, Ben. I think actually, when you introduced us there at the beginning, and you said it revolves around 3 kids, it actually really revolves around 4 kids.
Yes, Sam being one.
Because if you go back and you have a quick look, you actually see that issue 1 is Tyler's story. Tyler's the oldest son, and he's most like his dad. He even looks like his dad.
Yeah.
And then issue 2 is about Bodie, the youngest, and the one who's kind of least affected by the death, really.
Yes.
And then issue 3 is about Kinsey, the middle daughter.
Yes.
And adapting to her new situation.
Who's struggling to adapt.
Issue 4 is just fully about Sam.
Yep, Sam and his little Great Escape.
But even we see his backstory too.
Dun, 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 dun.
So Sam in this is as developed a character as any of the others.
He is, so I'll give you that, Michael.
Thank you.
You've scuppered me royally.
Give
Well
me
played.
one.
So yeah, I think that's a little bit of a plain thing. It's not just a family drama, ladies and gentlemen. The family drama is set to the backdrop of one other character, which is Lovecraft, the house that the family is forced to live in after the death of their... Well, not forced to, but feel that they must live in after the death of their father. So they retreat to Lovecraft. Excellent podcasting there.
Now, I'm just going to interrupt you again, Ben, because I'm a bit concerned that you've become a bit mixed up. Lovecraft is the town.
Sorry. Oh, damn it.
The house
they
is
have to
called
retreat
Key
to the
House,
town of
Ben.
Lovecraft, and they have to live in Key House, which is I suppose probably the fifth big character that we could say this is about. Because within this house, Michael, the rules of reality are all warped and shifted around and higgledy-piggledy due to one particular thing.
Funnily
Michael.
enough, though, Ben, is that really important
No.
in this series?
No.
It's not massively.
No.
This, and again, this harkens back to what we said earlier about treating this as an individual collection. This is, and Joe Hill won't like this, Ben, but it's quite Stephen King-esque.
Oh, that's gonna rub old Joe the wrong way.
And the last thing I want to do is rub Joe Hill the wrong way.
You don't like rubbing anyone the wrong way, Michael.
No.
You're a consensually rubbed individual.
Yes,
That's
Joe.
what you're into.
But it is quite Stephen King-y.
Perhaps you could explain why he won't like you saying that, Michael.
Well, it's
For
his
the
dad,
listeners.
isn't it? It's his
Yes,
dad.
it's his dad.
Stephen King's his dad.
Joe Hill is not a pseudonym. Nom
Nom
de
de
plume. Is a nom de plume.
Or is Joe Hill his real name?
No, Joe Hill is a nom de plume.
What's his real name?
Stephen
Stephen King Jr.
I think it's Joe King.
Is it?
Yeah.
Anyway.
He's joking all the time. No, I'm just kidding. But originally, when he set up, he gave himself a nom de plume so that he wouldn't be associated with his father's work and he would be given kind of his own merit. However, there are some bloody strong Stephen King
This is quite
themes
Stephen King-y.
rocking through here.
Now, again, we're not talking about later issues and
No.
later collections, and if they do or don't
No.
change or be similar.
Nope.
But this one is quite Stephen King-y.
It's bloody small town America
There's small town America.
with big secrets hidden under the dirt.
There's big secrets, Ben. Also,
Yeah.
there's a horror going on.
Yes.
This is a horror comic.
It's a horror comic.
But
Fully.
but the horror is not the supernatural.
No,
which
it's
is often...
people.
Yeah. There are supernatural elements to this, but that's not where the horror comes from.
People are the worst.
Yeah. So Sam, for example, I can't remember his family name, but
Sam the serial killer.
Sam the killer, he has touches of Jack from The Shining
Yes.
about him.
Yeah.
He's gone mad through contact with the supernatural.
I suppose we should probably explain that a little bit as well.
Go
Or
on.
would you like to continue with your thing and then
Well, no,
explain?
go on.
The major supernatural element to play in Volume 1 is dodge.
Echo.
Dodge, echo, whatever way you want to refer to him, her, as Dodge is a, well, we call her Echo. Let's call her Echo.
Echo. She's Echo in the first 4 issues. 5
Echo
issues.
is the spirit in the well, the lady in the well. And Bodhi is the first one to discover her. He's called to by Echo. And we slowly realize that Sam has gone through a similar experience of being kind of chosen by Echo and then not necessarily tormented, but certainly manipulated to an nth degree.
But Sam was already mentally unstable.
I know, and she preys on that exact mental condition.
Well, I think we can say she.
Yeah, we can say she in
At least
Volume 1.
initially.
She lives in the well, and she's very sinister. She's very well drawn. There's something very unnerving about the way she is.
It's her spidery fringe.
drawn. It could be.
She has a horrible spidery
It
fringe.
could be exactly that. But I would argue, Michael, that this is one of the most unsettling villains that I have read in a comic book ever.
Go on.
I just find her to be an exceptionally unsettling character.
Really?
There is never a point where I'm reading her where I trust her an inch. I'm always worried about what she's going to do next. And poor Sam is just tormented by Echo. And Echo is the main antagonist for Volume 1.
Really, Echo is she's the emperor to Sam's Darth Vader.
Yeah.
She's the driving force behind everything. But like I said,
Palpatine, but he's sexy Palpatine.
She's not the horror. The horror is Sam. The horror is a mad person showing up at your house with an axe.
And just going to town.
That's what's scary about this.
Yes.
You're a normal family, and then horrible people show up and do something horrible. That's the real horror.
And you have no control over it whatsoever.
And it shows in the repeated kind of trauma that the kids all face. How Bodhi, it kind of bounces off Bodhi.
Yeah, he's a
excited,
child.
but what's his name? Tyler keeps seeing the violence he had to commit to stop Sam.
Pretty grim.
And that he blames himself for
an
off-the-cuff comment he made to Sam once.
Yeah, and it's thrown him off.
Where he says, if you ever kill your parents, do me a favour and kill my dad. And Kinsey keeps biting her lip.
Yes.
She keeps drawing blood out of her lip, which is what she did when she was trying to save Bodhi from the killers. And her mother becomes an alcoholic.
Due to trauma related to an implied rape and bloody losing her husband.
Yeah.
She's got a major injury now as well, doesn't she?
She does. She's got a limp.
She's got a limp.
She's got a limp leg.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on here. It's a family in disrepair, very much so. And as you said, Michael, there are supernatural elements here, but they're really not central. What those supernatural elements allow us to do is to explore those characters even more deeply as we go along, and it gives us kind of a fly on the wall perspective to a lot of different things. I suppose, to a degree,
go on.
You could argue that the Key House is more magical realism than anything else, in that there are small supernatural elements influencing events, but there's nothing, especially in Volume 1, there's nothing that's warping the world around them. They haven't crossed any kind of threshold.
No.
Unless you count Bodhi. Yeah.
Well, Bodhi literally crosses the threshold and becomes a ghost. But it really throws back to me to the Shinning again.
Yeah.
Where there's a little boy who has an awareness, not really through... He's too young to really know what's going on, but he can see the ghosts and he can kind of... He's a bit more aware of the supernatural goings on. But if you ask people, is the Shinning a supernatural horror? They'll probably say no, it's just a horror.
It's just a horror.
The supernatural elements of the Shinning might just be someone going mad.
It could be. We haven't figured that out yet.
This particular collected edition of 6 issues would work just as well, Benjamin, if Echo was a figment of Sam's imagination.
Yeah, there's no need for there to be a real supernatural threat here.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true.
It's just a horrible person with an X.
It's absolutely true. I mean, I think the last couple of issues, the last 2 especially, just show us how much human influence can be had here. In fact, Michael, you could argue that the only time... Well, so to go straight to the end...
All right.
To spoil it...
We're a bit all over the place today, but go ahead.
Well, we were all over the place anyway, Michael.
Yeah, look, it's fine.
We weren't going to win on this one because it's a complex story with complex themes and it's going to take some complex dissection.
Go on then.
Sam's arc, as you said, is it's never sympathetic, but it is given a reason.
Yeah.
In a lot of it, and it's clear from the get-go that Sam has some serious mental health issues and self-worth issues running underneath, ticking along, and Echo takes full advantage of that until the children are so scared that they resort to helping Echo. Bodhi knows from his initial meeting with Echo that it's like, oh,
don't like
you're not something to be messed around with.
Look at your spidery hair.
Yeah, there's something off about you.
Look at your terrible hair.
He visits Echo as a ghost in the initial issues. And then out of sheer desperation, he goes to free her later in the thing. And it's because of the events that Echo has set in motion in that horrific prison scene that they are forced to resort to Echo as an aid. And Echo takes full advantage. She manifests into the form of a new character, and she bloody murders Sam by the end of the trade paperback.
Yeah.
But it's funny, she can only do that when she's human. So she can only enact her revenge when she's become a kind of...
It's actually a very complicated lore of this series reason that she needs that help.
Yeah.
And reading just this, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No, we don't understand fully who Echo is.
She's trapped in a well, but she needs a special key to be able to get out of the well. But then when she gets out of the well, she needs a different key to become a boy for some reason. And then she's back in the real world. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's not well explained. But there is something to be said for, they kind of state that. The character states that and says, you think you're coming in at the beginning. You don't know what's going on. You think you're coming in at the beginning of the story, but it's really the end.
Interesting.
Which is important because it helps you build a slight sense of trust. I think that's the writer speak to us and saying, look,
Just bear with me.
Bear with me a second. I know this doesn't make a whole heap of sense,
But you're going to like it.
but it will make a whole heap of sense.
Yeah, I think in terms of, as we said, Joe Hill is mildly influenced by his father. But I think he takes a lot of the traditional tropes and kind of fleshes them out a bit more. I think there's a sounder logic at play in some of this work than there would be in a Stephen King gig. I'm not saying he's better. I'm just saying in terms of dealing with real people, real emotions, he certainly has a better grasp of genuine human interaction than Stephen King.
Well, let's not compare him to Stephen King because that's doing him a disservice.
It is doing him a disservice. It's interesting. This was his first kind of foray into comics. And him and Gabriel Rodriguez. Gabriel Rodriguez, whose art did not appeal to me on the surface. However, it grows on you as you go along. What I found out about Gabriel Rodriguez as I was reading this one, Michael, former architect.
Get out of
Former
here.
architect.
That makes so much sense.
Fully trained architect. And it does make so much sense when you look at the buildings and rooms that he draws.
Yeah, look
They're
at the
ideal.
buildings. Look at those isometric projections.
And because the house plays such a central kind of character, it's probably essential to have someone who bloody knows how to draw them.
That makes
Look
a
at the
lot
doors.
of sense.
Look at the magnificent doors.
The keys.
The keys.
The woodwork
So
on the
consistent.
panels. That is a very good thing that I've just learned, Ben. That is incredible.
So he's an architect and was still working as an architect at the time of helping Joe Hill to bring this to life.
I don't think he helped Joe Hill to bring it to life so much as he brought it to life with Joe Hill.
With Joe Hill. Okay, fair enough.
I agree with you, Ben. I wasn't ever, initially when I picked this up, it wasn't my favourite art. I thought it looked a bit webcomic-y.
It is very webcomic.
And I think webcomic-y to me means slightly amateurish. I thought
Slightly
it looked
cartoonish.
a little bit amateurish. I think it's not the type of colouring and shading that we would be somewhat used to
drab and grim
in a more mainstream comic. There's very little shading in this.
Very little. Doesn't it's an airbrushing technique.
Is it?
Is what's used. It's called the airbrush shading method. There's no cell shading, or heavy render or anything like that. It's very apparent in faces.
Yeah,
which you can see on occasion.
It's clearly digitally coloured.
But what I would say, well, this was the early days of digital colouring, Michael. This was 2008. This was when digital colouring was at the forefront, and everyone's like, "Let's digital colour everything."
Now I like the palette.
The palette is
That's what I'm
fine.
saying.
It's deathly. One of the things that really sticks out to me is how distinct he manages to make his characters, because that's quite often a complaint that I have, Michael.
Yes.
Is that very often when we do this kind of thing, a lot of our characters end up looking samey. I don't think that Gabriel Rodriguez could be accused
Not
of that.
at all, Ben.
He does draw a lady in a particular manner. Nina and Echo are very similar, I think, to a degree.
Yeah.
But each character is distinct, and none of his children characters are creepy children. They are distinctly childlike.
Yeah.
His choice of colours is quite interesting. I mean, there's, as we said before, Bodhi crosses thresholds quite a bit as the ghost boy in this, but he leaves a dead body behind, and it's interesting to see how he colours the corpse immediately corpse-like and then living. So he does a good job of some elements, and the characters are all distinct. I don't know. I haven't checked.
Coloured by J Photos. It's probably a fake name.
It's definitely a company.
But look at the Ben at the back of this collection. We have the character heads. And Tyler really looks like his dad. I like that.
Yeah, no, it's commented on in the thing several times that he looks exactly like his dad.
But what I really like, Ben, and this is what I really like, is that Kinsey looks like she could be the daughter of Nina and Rendell.
I mean, there's some good work happening.
Look at that.
There's some good work happening there.
She's got bloody Rendell's eyes.
I mean,
but Nina's kind of general head structure. Look at that. That's great.
We were a little bit critical. What I would love to see, and it will never happen because we don't do that with comics, I'd love to see it recolored properly.
I think it may. I think that isn't outside the bounds of possibility.
I would like to see a proper revisiting of Gabriel Rodriguez's pencils and inks, with a colorist who knows what they're about.
I'm not saying that the colorist here doesn't know what they're about. I just think you're right that it's kind of early digital coloring.
Early digital coloring, and it's not sloppy, but it's not refined. Not refined to the place that it could be. That being said, Michael, I do love the character designs. They're sinister and twisty, and they fit the landscape of Lovecraft as a town.
Yeah, that's the other thing. The town of Lovecraft itself, although we don't see much of it.
There's a lovely little sketch there at the back done by Gabriel Rodriguez where he shows you the town.
I'm just picking up some of the later issues here, Ben.
Don't do that, Michael. That's not where we're at.
The colouring does improve, actually.
But as I've said, Michael, yes,
go on.
the grimness of this comic is really brought home in the last 2 issues, where it's what I enjoyed most about this. Well, maybe not enjoyed, but what I respected a lot about this is the struggle of violence is represented very well here. Ow, I was putting it back because you're useless. The struggle of violence is represented very well here, Michael.
It's very violent.
But there's no effortless violence here. Mm-hmm. There's no effortless violence here. Every piece of violence carries a consequence.
There's no cool guy violence.
There's no cool guy violence. Every act of violence looks like it takes something out of the character. Mm-hmm. And I like that. I like that representation of violence, Michael. I love a good struggle violence in my comics. What I find very interesting is that we don't reset the character of Tyler after his action to save his siblings.
No, he's very upset.
He's very upset. He's going through some serious trauma as we go along. There's always a lot of struggling on the ground in those final issues. You know, Sam's trying to squirm away to get a brick or a hatchet or a knife or a something.
Gun, anything.
Something just to really take care of business. And everything takes blood, sweat and tears to manage. I also enjoy the fact that the characters are never prepared for the violence that comes into their lives.
Because they're not superheroes, Ben.
They're not superheroes.
They're teenagers.
They don't get grim and gritty reboots after their first. Like, Nina is no better equipped for the violence of the second time that Sam enters her life than she was in the first one. Again, they are random, jarring acts of violence that cause a lot of damage. In fact, we get very little introduction to the keys of the key house.
That's what I'm saying. This, I don't know what way this is going to go in future issues, Ben. I do.
You do, because you've read the whole bloody thing.
But that's what I mean. That's why I really like this. It's the supernatural stuff and the keys and stuff are there, but they're not the driving force of the thing. The driving force of the thing is, look at this bad man, let's get rid of him, he's here.
They're designed in 6 key issues, or key trade paperbacks, and each one is an arc. So you could... You could take a break at the end of each one. There's a little cliffhanger at the end of each one. But each 6 issue collection, except for the last one, which has 7,
which we're not
bring it up to 30. Yeah, we're not bringing it up. They have a sense of closure to each one. There's an ebb and a flow to each arc. Yeah. They're satisfying reads.
This is a satisfying, self-contained story. If I never have to hear more about the keys and the mystery of the house, and I don't really mind.
It would remain a sweet taste in your mouth, Michael.
Yeah, because this is still good. Because it's a story about how that murdery guy comes and tries to murder them and he fails, and then they're worried he's going to come back, and he does come back, and they're still not prepared because they're dealing with all their trauma, and then they pull together as a family and they just about scrape through.
Such realism. It's very
good. I really like it.
Yes, it is. It is one of your favourite comics, Michael, as we've covered before. What do you think influenced this little bad boy, Michael?
Well, obviously, Ben, the title has to give a little hint.
Yes,
welcome
it probably
to Lovecraft.
Does.
Funnily enough, though, I don't think that this is a madly Lovecraftian story.
No.
Although it is about some sort of ancient evil driving a person mad and driving them to murder.
Yes, but not necessarily in the traditional Lovecraftian sense of...
Well, there's women in it.
Well, that's
one thing that's different.
Are there many people of colour? I don't know. I didn't...
There's a detective. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. A detective of colour.
But also, Lovecraft really, I don't think... And I haven't read all of Lovecraft, Ben.
You wouldn't want to.
I wouldn't claim to have.
You wouldn't want to.
But he didn't tend to focus on families.
No, because he had no understanding of them as a thing. Everyone was a lone intellectual striving out on their own.
Going mad.
Yeah, a proud intellectual slowly going mad.
So, I mean,
a proud explorer.
There is a Lovecraftian thing, and I don't know, maybe it will become more prevalent, the Lovecraftian themes of this, in later collected
perhaps. Yeah, perhaps. But in this one, the Gothic is there. It's
quite a Gothic house.
Quintessentially American Gothic. It's that there are so many themes of the American Gothic here that it's hard to... Bloody land, built on the bones of other people, sins of the father, mistakes of the son. It's just so much going on here, Michael. I think small town American novels have played a huge part in this. I think we're dealing with a family who can't do their effervescent West Coast lifestyle anymore. Duncan is a fascinating character, growing up as a gay failed painter in a small town rural community. No, but I mean, that's a quintessential kind of American narrative.
When I was reading this, I felt that Duncan was gay as a point of convenience,
So he didn't have an overlap with Nina?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got that feeling. Now,
Absolutely.
it does work itself out a bit better than that later on, I imagine.
But we don't talk about that,
We
Michael.
don't talk about that. But in this, it was like, the only reason he's gay is to say, don't worry, I'm not going to fall in love with my dead brother's wife.
That'd be bloody weird.
Yeah, that would be odd, wouldn't it?
Bloody weird. I think, in terms of this, no one is happy
No.
in this comic. I think there's a grim reality to that, to a degree. There's a grim reality to the fact that no one's really doing their best here. Duncan's not doing great.
But they're coping.
They're coping.
It's a comic about coping.
It's a coping comic.
Look at Kinsey coping. She got a haircut. She put on her running clothes.
She's big on transformation.
Yeah. And then she went off.
The Fab Five would love her.
Mm-hmm. The Beatles?
No, wait, where do they go? The Queer Eye for a Straight Guy thing.
I've never seen it.
Queer Eye. The Queer Eye crew would love her.
Okay, very good.
I can't remember what
Benjamin,
it's called.
here's another thing
Yes.
about this.
Yes.
You know how they have a key that turns you from a boy to a girl?
Yes.
That really assumes there's only two genders, doesn't it?
Well, we're not going to touch that here at the podcast, Michael. That's for better men than us to decide.
What would
Or
happen?
women, or other.
What would happen if someone non-binary went through that door, Ben? What would
They
happen
get a
to them?
sharp bloody awakening, Michael, is what they get.
Would they? Who knows what they would have?
Who knows what they get? Maybe they just turn into a puff of smoke.
Maybe. Just poof and they're gone.
Poof and they're gone. To a happy place where gender never existed. Look, I mean, there are some pretty interesting themes at play here, Michael. I think
Dealing with trauma.
I think the gender androgyny of Echo is
Let's talk about that for a
a
moment.
huge part of this comic.
Because Echo
And
pops out-
2008 was pre-major identity politics discussion. Like this was not a common theme in works here. She's a bloody sexy lady, isn't she, Michael? She's meant to be sultry or seductive, or
But then she comes out and she turns into a man, and she's pretty much the same.
she's almost exactly the same. So maybe gender is just a construct of Joe Hill. I don't know.
I don't know. Who
don't
am I to
know.
put words in Joe Hill's mouth? He does put on a hoodie when he's a man. though.
I know she's a woman in the beginning to take advantage of that classic trope of the woman in the water.
Right.
I mean, we've had that throughout any kind of folklore and mythology. The lady in the lake, the woman in the water, the woman of the well is a tried and tested trope. It's very Edgar Allan Poe, the creature in the well. It's very Poesque. And I know it's there to take advantage of that in the beginning, but it changes into something entirely different as we go along. Look, reading the whole series is very enjoyable, Michael. If you enjoy this one, you'll probably enjoy the rest of them. But yeah, if people like this, Michael,
Yes.
what else should they be sinking their teeth into?
I don't bloody know, Ben.
Well, I think you could pick up a Stephen King novel or two.
You could do.
You could go and read some of Joe Hill's actual work.
What are Joe Hill's actual works, Ben? Do you
So
have any
if
there?
you're into the small town secrets, the sins of the past kind of gig, you're gonna have to pick up Joe Hill's Horns, because that's what that is. Basically, a young man is possessed by a demonic force, and basically anyone he meets has to spill their secrets to him. And it's an interesting bloody novelization of a man's descent into demonic punishment. It's interesting. If you're into the random acts of violence, you could probably read his Nosferatu series about a hitchhiking vampire who murders people.
is that kind of similar to Sam's journey across the country?
Suppose you could look at it that way. I would say this is probably a proto kind of event of that.
Okay.
If you're into this kind of thing in general, look at some of the early Vertigo comics. It's quite reminiscent of Sandman's bloody serial killer convention. There's a touch of that about it. I know we've said that before on the podcast. But in many ways, Michael, this is its own thing.
I find this quite unique.
Yeah,
to be
in many
honest.
ways, this is its own thing.
I find it hard to think of something similar to this because most of the comics are either just overt supernatural horror.
Yeah.
Or there aren't
a
that
lot.
many comics that are as high up as this in terms of family drama, and
I suppose Black Hammer might have some elements of it, but again, this is unique.
a lot more overtly superhero-y and a lot more, it's
Looking around your comics here, trying to find something.
I don't think there's a lot out there like this. Now, Ben, I might just be missing it. Because
No, I think there's no way of distancing this from the influence of some very big horror folklore writers. Joe Hill is very clearly influenced not only by horror but by folklore and mythology. I think there's a lot of that going in there. I mean, there are elements of Hellboy in the Gothic and Sandman in the overarching Gothic, but early But Joe Hill does something excellent with it. He is not at all controlled by his influences in this. I think it is fair to say, Michael,
Mm-hmm.
I think you've hit it nail on the head. Hatchet in the brain.
Hatchet in the back of the neck.
That this is its own thing. This is something beyond the sum of its influences. I think Joe Hill has taken this and run along. And I'm happy to report that it's consistent. I can happily recommend volume 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
You don't be going around recommending other volumes.
Well, that's what this part of the podcast is all about. Yeah, you see.
Who knows what will happen?
For the listeners, who knows what will happen apart from
I
making
do
myself.
Yeah, I do know.
But yeah, ladies and gentlemen.
Of course, Ben, there's also a TV series coming.
Yes, there's a TV series coming on Netflix, so you need to get in there, get a bit of read, so you know what all the references are if you like us in
Before we
completions.
go on, do you think that the TV series is going to commit to this level of grim violence, or is it going to be more a jaunty thing about keys?
It's not going to commit to this level of violence, Michael.
Do you not think that's...
It would be very hard to commit. I think the score of the trailer gave away a little more than it should have.
I think, Ben, it really depends on what they do with Sam.
I think it depends on what they do with Bodhi.
I think Sam is the key character in this particular collected issue.
This
is Sam's story, Ben.
Will an American TV company touch Sam in the current climate?
That's what I'm wondering.
I don't think they will.
Will they commit to a mad school killer?
Is he going to be MAGA influenced, Michael?
Make America great again?
Well, I mean, you know, you
I
have
don't think so.
Well, you had that spate of gun crimes there at the start of last year and the middle of last year that were all MAGA related because they were inspired by Trump's bloody rhetoric on the thing.
Oh, we're getting very political now.
No,
Ben.
I don't mean it like that, but in the current climate, can they touch this type of lone wolf character? Is it a possible thing to go near that? And will Netflix commit to the bit, Michael?
Sam isn't political, though. He's just...
No, he's not.
He's a product of his upbringing. He's a product of his trauma.
But this came out in 2008. It's 2020, Michael.
Yeah.
We're all up here living in 2020.
Yeah.
The climate's changed, Michael.
Yeah.
So how are they going to represent it this
fire,
time?
for example.
I think 2008 would have been a lot more representative of Bowling for Columbine.
Do you think so? I don't know. But he's not a school killer. I mean...
Yeah, that's true. He's not a full-blown school killer, but he is a school influence killer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a lot going on. Look, what do you think, ladies and gentlemen? I will tell you something that ripped this off full scale.
Go on.
Bloody American Horror Story on FX.
There's a good bit of...
There's a good bit of lifting from this very good comic in season 1.
When did season 1 of American Horror Story come out?
Much later than 2008, I'll tell you that much.
Are you sure?
2011, I think. I'll double check it out.
Yeah, there was actually. And actually, you know, the guy from that... Is he Quicksilver now? He is Quicksilver, isn't he? Yeah. Is Evan?
He's a bit Sammy.
Yeah, he'd be a good Sam, actually.
He'd be a great Sam. Oh, Netflix.
He would have been.
I know you've already made it.
He's 35 now.
You listen to Netflix? 2011. Nailed it.
And what's his name? Evan Rachel Wood?
Evan Rachel Wood is not that gentleman, no. Where's he gone?
Was the character's name Evan? I think the character's name was Evan.
Evan Peters.
Played
by Tate. No, Evan Peters is the actor.
Yeah.
He played Tate Langdon.
Tate Langdon was pretty Sammy.
Very Sammy.
A
lot lifted in American Horror Story season 1.
You're right, actually. That's a good shout.
That was something I wanted to talk a bit more about.
It's a creepy house.
It's a creepy house filled with secrets and sins. Yeah, so I think...
Not as tightly plotted as this, though.
Not as tightly... No, not as good.
Not more stretched out.
Not as good, very stretched. Ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
What did you think
you're not talking to me.
of volume number 1 of Locke and Key? Will you be reading the rest? Are you looking forward to the Netflix adaptation? Who is your favourite character? Does Echo confuse, arouse and terrify you all at once like it does me? Ladies and gentlemen, let us know down below in the comments. As always, if you have anything to recommend to us, you can get in touch with us at seomrabeag.com, seomrabeag.com.
Means tiny room in Irish.
We're on Instagram. You can give us a shout over there. We're probably most active on Instagram for interacting with people. Again, Seomra Beag, exact same way. Next 2 weeks, ladies and gentlemen, in 2 weeks' time, you will be taking a look at Black Sad with us, the Spanish European comic. Probably read it in English. We will be.
I'll read it in Spanish.
You're going to be reading in Spanish.
Hola!
And we'll be taking a look at the grim noir world filled with animals that kind of predated Zootopia by a country mile.
¿Dónde está la biblioteca, Ben?
¿Dónde está la biblioteca? That's it from us, ladies and gentlemen. Adios.
Adios. Vaya con Dios.
Just stop, don't I? Just stop.